Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar, and good morning to everyone in the West Coast. My name is Despina Stamatelos. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Access Control and ClearID, and I'm joined by Jonathan Doyon, the Product Group Director for ClearID.
Good afternoon.
Before we get into the presentation, just a few housekeeping items. On the right side of your screen, there's an area where you could ask some questions if you'd like, as well as there's a chat group as well. So anything you may want to ask us during the presentation, please go ahead and do so. If not, we'll be taking Q&A at the end of the webinar. Our agenda for today, we'll be looking at trends in the access control market, physical identity and access management systems, and why ClearID is the right solution. Joe will walk you through a demonstration of ClearID's core functionalities. We'll share some information where you could get additional information on the product as well as support, and the Q&A session as mentioned before. Key themes that you should walk away with today is that access control alone is not enough for enforcing security policies and managing access rights. The manual approach to access management, as many of you may have already experienced, is very time-consuming, costly, and prone to human error. And there is a smarter and more efficient way to work, which we will be showing you. Trends that are shaping the access control market. So there's a few trends that we've been seeing throughout the last couple of years, and that I think we'll keep seeing in the next few years. One trend that you may be experiencing is the increase of stringent regulations that impact the way you work, forcing your organization to look for efficient ways to comply, enforcing policies, and standardizing across sites. So for example, utility providers can be fined by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, which is a US regulator, for failing to remove access rights for identities that are no longer associated with a company. So these kinds of corporations are looking for ways to standardize and to make sure they're complying with the policies that these regulators are putting in place. Another trend we're seeing is insider threats. We're hearing more about insider threats coming within the company. In 2016, Cybersecurity Intelligence Index showed that IBM found that 60% of all attacks were carried out by insiders. Although these attacks were not always malicious, it does show the threat that an insider can pose to an organization and its security. Finally, we're seeing right from within and outside our industry a surge in mergers and acquisitions that lead to growing interconnectivity. As your business expands, your access control must grow along with you. And so we are seeing the merger of access control system or the addition of new ones, making access right management much more complex, especially if you need to move cardholders onto one card solution, to consolidate systems and find new efficiencies to improve your day-to-day operations. And so it starts becoming overwhelming to support and ensure that your facilities and people are truly secured. There's other challenges that organizations are facing daily. One of them being operators have too much to do. I'm sure you may have experienced this within your organization, where as a company grows and the access control system expands, the burden on the operator becomes enormous, as they must manage greater number of cardholders, areas, and access right management. This obviously can be very expensive to maintain, and so many customers are looking for solutions that don't overwhelm operators or don't have to increase budget to add to the number of operations. These solutions reduce overdependence on operators so they can respond to emerging threats and incidents, which they're paid to do so. The manual approach to enforcing policies, like procedures for managing cardholders with lost credentials or the procedure for making special access requests, can be very challenging to enforce, especially with many remote sites. Lastly, finding the right balance between restricting access, lowering risk, and ensuring convenience is a tough balance to strike. How do you ensure policies are being complied with without impacting the natural flow of people within your organization? The underlying problem is that access control solutions on their own don't solve for this issue. Finding the right balance between restricting access, lowering risk, and ensuring convenience is really a tough balance to strike. At one extreme, everyone has access to everything, which ultimately increases the risk of the organization itself. So ACS alone is only half the equation. Access control is about managing doors, card holders, and credentials. You run reports, manage alarm, and control access. Access control systems were never designed to automate access right management or to help ensure compliance, creating a gap in the market as companies evolve. So we often just rely on people to enforce policies, on people to provide special access to areas. And so obviously this can create a security gap. And so the way to move forward is a workflow-based approach to managing access. Yes, access control, again, can help improve your company's operations and intelligence, but it cannot enforce policies and improve the ease and secure flow of people within an organization. To improve that flow, we can not only rely on managing cardholders' access rights and credentials. A more efficient way is to rely on identities, attributes, and enforced policies. Workflows guide implementation and daily activities. These challenges are addressed by a physical identity and access management system, or what we'll refer to as PIAM. For many of you, this may be a new term. For others, you may have heard of identity and access management from the IT world. So let me explain a bit. PIAM solutions provide unified physical identity management across IT applications and physical security systems. These systems essentially allow you to centrally manage the lifecycle of identities for employees, clients, and suppliers based on identities and attributes, which I will review very shortly. This includes the ability to deploy credentials as well as assign access rights for a specific period of time to secured areas, something an access control system alone cannot do, as many of you have probably experienced. However, there is a problem with current PIAM systems in the market. In speaking with customers over the last year as we started developing ClearID, installing installing a PIAM solution can be a huge undertaking in the way it was done in the past. Deployments often take around 3 years because they need to be customized to each organization's unique needs. Because of these system links, multiple access control systems together results in a combined system that is only as strong as its weakest link. So in terms of adoption, we haven't seen a mass market adoption yet because the current systems are very costly, and so they were only available to certain organizations who had the budget to be able to implement them. So, the status quo right now, there is a better approach to the status quo, and that's where ClearID comes into the picture. And so Genetec ClearID is an off-the-shelf self-service physical identity and access management system. It's not those huge, complicated on-premise solutions. It's an out-of-the-box solution that's 100% unified with Synergist, as are all of our Genetec solutions. Makes it much easier to deploy and also available to the everyday organization who faces a lot of the same issues in managing access rights as larger corporations do. By doing this, ClearID helps mitigate security risk by standardizing and enforcing security policies through the workflow-based approach that I spoke about earlier, that really relies on policies, people identities, and attributes. So no longer do you have to rely on your security operator to enforce the policies that are somewhere in a binder on a shelf collecting dust, or breaking the rules and saying, hey, Joe, yeah, go ahead, go in that room, and then putting a little post-it note on their computer saying, oh yeah, please remember to remove Joe's access by the end of the week. So it takes away the human error as well. And Joe will go into that and show you exactly how that works. Before we do so, I just want to clarify, I spoke about identities, just want to clarify what that is. So an identity is much more than the profile of a card holder. It's an employee's or visitor's unique digital profile. So it could be permanent for employees or semi-permanent or temporary for visitors. And an identity interacts across many security and business systems. So this can be, as an identity as an employee, we're a window user, we're somebody in the Microsoft Active Directory. We have a specific role within an organization, and we are a card holder. Then each identity is comprised of various attributes, be it the department we work in, which location we are at, and what role we are in. So if I take myself and Joe as an example, I work in the marketing department in another building, and I'm a product marketing manager. Joe works in the R&D department, he's a director, and he's located somewhere else. So all of those different aspects make up our identity. It includes training certificates, if we're on leave or on sabbatical, seniority and pay grade, and those could all be determined by the customer, what kind of attributes each of their employees have. So a better approach really relies on policies that automatically assign rights to identities, people, based on those attributes. And I'd like to ask Joe to actually take us through the life cycle of an identity.
Yeah, so typically what we see today with our customer is some of them will use something like Active Directory as a way to automatically create cardholders in the system and automatically terminate cardholders when they leave or when they no longer work for that facility. But then the challenge comes, how do we determine which access each individual should have? And that's where 2 and 3 becomes challenging. So in many organizations I've seen is either security will receive a form that's sent by HR, and then the form is filled by the hiring manager that says, okay, Jonathan will need access to the server room, he will need access to the 3rd floor, and then security will process those access and then configure Synergis with the proper access rule. Now the challenge comes when, let's say, that person now transition to a new position in the organization, and now she no longer needs access to the server room, but she needs access to a 3rd building. And that's where it becomes where sometimes you're going to see some people, they'll send an email, like the person will send an email to security, then security will find who's the stakeholder, let's say, of that restricted area in the 2nd and the 3rd building. They'll send an email to that person, wait until they reply, then they're going to grant them access because the person will agree or not to grant them access. And what we see over time is people will always go to security whenever they don't have access to something, but they're going to end up collecting access because you never go back to security and say, okay, can you please remove me from the server room? I no longer need it. Like that never happens. And what we see now is if you start implementing Synergis today, like you're going to have a very clean separation of duty, like only specific person will have access to restricted areas. But if you go back now and you look at your system 5 years down the road, you're going to realize that you have tons of people that have access to probably places they're not even aware now because they've transitioned from different role within the organization. And that's a challenge that all our customers are facing today. Some people are implementing also what we call access review, which kind of generate a report every 3 months, and then someone needs to review that report and identify who should be removed. But then again, that's something that they have to do for regulation, and there's more efficient ways to do that.
And it's very manual, and again,
it's very manual, and then there's a series of email getting exchanged. So we're trying to simplify that with ClearID, and we're going to show you how.
And talking about simplifying, so in a very basic level, how ClearID works is we use a self-service portal that Joe will be showing you. And so employees can go in and request access to a secure area or request to meet with a visitor to a facility for a limited amount of time. Then ClearID will look at the identity of the individual and their attributes, as well as the policies that are in place. And based on that, it will either automatically approve that request or send it to the owner of the room for approval. And the owner could either say, yes, no problem, or you know what, no, you can't have access to that area. You could have access next week, or what it may be. And then as Joe was mentioning, all of those access requests, all of the ones that have been approved or rejected get tracked. And so as an area owner, you could go into your rooms, be it, let's say, the IT room, and say, hey, how come Despina still has access to that area? You shouldn't be there. And you could delete the access right away. In terms of functional modules, we have 3 main modules right now. It's attribute-based provisioning. So in terms of how do you assign credentials and access rights to new employees or to employees that are changing either jobs or locations? Do they keep their old access rights? What are their new access rights? And how do you balance all of that? We could do it in a very simplified manner within ClearID. Self-service portal for access management, which I just spoke about. There's a visitor access management module as well. And sometime in the future, we're also working on contractor access management. However, there's no timeline at this point in time. So without further ado, I think we could go into the demo.
So I'm going to start with the attribute-based provisioning. So the idea in ClearID is you have a concept that we call, okay, first of all,
how
ClearID.
Do people do it today?
Yeah, so, but yeah, most of you today, I assume you're going to manage people with cardholder groups. So whenever someone, let's say, joins the R&D department, sales department, you're going to manually add them in the cardholder group associated with that, and they're going to inherit from all the access that have been assigned to that sales department.
So if I change roles, sorry, Joe, if I change roles tomorrow, Joe, and I move to the Toronto office, what happens without ClearID?
Without ClearID, I guess typically either yourself or your manager is going to call security and say, okay, now Despina is in the Toronto office, salesperson, can you give her the right access? And then security people will go in Synergis, they're going to find the appropriate cardholder and they're going to add yourself to that cardholder group, and then you're going to inherit all the access.
So if someone's on vacation, I may not get access when
exactly.
I get there.
And also probably in the HR system, as you get transition, someone will put that now you're based in Toronto in the HR system, and you're also part of the sales organization. So those attributes are already set in there in your HR system. So the idea is now you can connect ClearID with that real source of data. Either this information will be populated via Active Directory, or it could be via a CSV file that's synchronized daily in ClearID. But then you can have those attributes in ClearID pushed, and the system can automatically move people in different cardholder group based on those attributes. So how it works, ClearID first is a pure cloud solution. So it's a service that sits on top of Synergis, and it basically controls it can push people into cardholder group, remove people from access rules, just based on what has been configured in the system.
So the credentials get updated.
The cardholder gets updated whenever like a change happens. So right now I can define within my organization, I can define roles. Those roles are basically represented as cardholder group and Synergis. But the idea is you can have a role that is the same among multiple Synergis systems. So if someone has 5 Synergis systems, they will have one ClearID, and then that role will be synchronized. So if I take an example, the IT team. So if I take my IT team, now I can, with ClearID, I can say, actually, I can delegate the management of that team to someone that is not in security, that doesn't need security there. So I can say my IT manager has the ability to add and remove people within his IT group. So whenever the IT manager connects on ClearID, he's going to be able to see his group, and he has the ability to add and remove people manually within his group. So that's
so the
already
employee
one
doesn't
step.
always have to request.
Exactly.
You could say to the manager, can you?
The sales manager
could do it himself.
Exactly. So the sales manager could say, okay, now Despina joined my team this week, right now, or let's say Despina in that case, I'm going to do the other example where Despina is leaving my team. So I can see Despina right now is leaving my team, so I can remove Despina myself. So that's the idea where you can delegate some of the responsibility to the real stakeholders who owns that group.
So you take it away from the operator and security, and you give it to the people who are owners of the room.
Exactly, but at that point we're still manual, but at least it's the stakeholders who do it, and at any point in time the stakeholder can review who's part of his team and remove them. So that's one way. But where it gets very, very interesting is now if you're connecting ClearID with a source of data that provides attribute for your employees, like the HR system as an example, now you can automate who's going to be put in that group based on attribute. So I can say anybody in the company, that department attribute contains the word IT, and if their own site is the HQ campus, or if their job title contains CIO, automatically they're going to be put in that group. So as someone joined the organization, he's part of IT in the HR system, they put IT, he's based in HQ campus, which is Montreal in our case. automatically he's going to be added to the group and inherit all the privilege. If that person changed department and no longer work in IT, so his attribute will be updated, let's say to sell, he will no longer match the policy. And then the policy says right now, if someone no longer match a policy, I want to remove them right away. Or I could say, I want to remove them access after 7 days. So really the system is designed that automatically people that match attributes will be automatically added and removed from the different cardholder group. So it simplifies a lot of management. Like when you have hundreds or thousands of cardholders, like you almost, I've seen some organizations that they have people daily just adding and remove people. Mostly they add people because nobody asked to be removed, but they're adding people to different cardholder groups based on the approval of different stakeholders.
So in this case, you have HQ campus, and you mentioned having multiple synergy systems. So if there's an IT department in another campus as well, can you add that they'll be provisioned for that campus as well?
Exactly. So the way it works, right? You define the group, and then you can assign that cardholder group to different security center systems. Okay. So the cardholder group is kind of global to ClearID. So if I have one or multiple security center system, now I can say that cardholder group should have access to facility 1, facility 2, facility 3. But then as soon as someone is added to that cardholder group, automatically they inherit all those access.
So you don't need multiple ClearID solutions?
No, typically a customer should have a single ClearID solution, and then they can have one or multiple synergist system depending on their architecture. But that ClearID system will be like pushing the information down to the different security center systems. Okay. So really, that's the concept of attribute-based provisioning. It's really designed to simplify to simplify the management of cardholders. And what cannot be automated, like I said earlier, you can elect managers of those groups, and you can have someone who complement what can be automated by the system. Because let's say you have sometimes dotted line report. But there's tons of attributes you can use, so the list is very, and you even have custom attributes.
And those attributes, the customer could have customized attributes.
Yeah, we have something called provision attribute, which is a list of tags. Okay. Exact. So you could assign something. Let's say if someone has a background check, so you could have a flag that says background check. You could synchronize that information from an external database or something like that. Okay. So that's really the concept of automated provisioning with roles. Now,
we spoke about access requests, right? And we had a situation where when I first started working with you, I had to ask you to come and unlock the door all the time, and then you had emailed the operator several times to give me access, and I never got that right. And we don't know when my access will be revoked. So obviously that poses security risk. How is access request managed within ClearID?
So one challenge, like you said, is how do you manage if I don't have access because it was not provisioned to me? How can I ask access and the system track? So ClearID has a concept called access requests. So any employee that is part of ClearID, they have access to a dashboard. They can see right now this user, because I'm using it for demo often, like he has tons of requests that are pending because sometimes I don't approve them, but then you can see all the requests that I've done, so I can see that this one is not really done yet. But then I can do an access request, which basically when I do an access request, the system will ask me where do you want to have access. So let's say I can have several offices around the world, so I can either click on the map or I can say, okay, next week I'm going to Brussels, and the system will present me with a list of areas that I can request access for.
So again, even though I'm situated in North America, I can ask for requests globally.
Yeah, if it's allowed by the system. Yeah, if it's allowed by the system, yeah. And then I can say, no, I'm going at Brussels next week. I need general access in the Brussels office, but I also need access to the server room, which is a restricted area. Now, the system will tell me, okay, when are you going there? Because a challenge we've seen is temporary access is a nightmare in access control. Like very often, what people will do, like if you look at most access control system, if you need to give temporary access to someone, you ask operators if they do it, and they simply say, I'm going to add them to the list. I'll put a post-it or I'll put a reminder in Outlook to remove him in a week because he's done. And sometimes that post-it
hope
or
you
reminder
remember.
is not coming back. So really, ClearID makes it really easy. John Smith needs access to Brussels. He requested. He says, I'll be in Brussels, let's say, the last week of December, just for Christmas, working on the holidays, and then specify, okay, I'll be there that period. I'm going there. So you specify the reason.
And this is very important because that's something we don't have within an access control system.
Yeah.
You ask for a request,
you don't know
John
why.
says go, but we don't know why.
Exactly. But you got it, but it's in the email trail.
You gotta find where that information
was. Yeah, somewhere. Exactly.
And if it was verbal, well,
exactly.
You don't have anything.
So the idea is so you capture that reason. Then when I hit next, the system knows now I'm asking access to 2 different places, and those can be configured with different access control schedule. So as a user, I can say, I want 24/7 access, and this one, I want 24/7 access, and those are really Security Center schedule in the backend. Once I confirm, the system, since I requested access to 2 rooms, the system in fact starts 2 workflows. Now, in that case, the workflows are different because general access, I set my system as a way that general access get automatically approved. But the server room needs to be approved by the owners of the server room. So these people right now, I'm not even aware, like I'm making my request and I'm not even aware who are the owner. I don't need to know. Yeah, but then the system creates a request and I can see right now it's waiting for approval. And I can see my request. It's either Chase or Jonathan, myself, my other user, who can approve that request. And you see the request has been made, nothing happened like 37 seconds ago. Now, if I go in my mailbox, because I'm using 2 accounts here, if I do from ClearID, I see right now, I have the request that says, John Smith wants to access the server room. He wants the always schedule. He needs to install a new server. Now I can click approve or reject. So if I click approve, the system automatically takes me to the access request. If I was not authenticated on the system, it would ask me to authenticate myself. I was already connected. Now I see the request. I see that he's asking for those dates. As the owner of the room, I have the luxury of even changing that request. If I say, no, you're going to work on Christmas. And yeah, and then you're working not 24/7, but only business hours. I can even put a comment like only business hours allowed and approve that request. At this point, if I look in Synergist, like the person, the guy still doesn't have access.
Oh, because it's only going to go on the 25th.
It's in more than 1 month.
Oh.
So now ClearID knows that on the 25th at 0 hour, basically at midnight, the system will add that person, John Smith, on the weekday schedule. So let's say the weekday schedule is 7 to 5. Mm-hmm. So John Smith will have access from 7 to 5, the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th. At the end of the 29th, ClearID will automatically remove that person.
When's that information shown in Synergist?
So it's going to show up in Synergist on the 25th.
On the 25th, okay.
Yeah.
So all the pending, all the ones that are waiting?
Yeah, those workflows are just waiting until the start date. And now, as the owner of the room, I can go and see. So let's say I'm the server room owner right now, and I need to, so if I'm using Synergist today, I'm a regular IT guy. I don't have security desk. I don't have the config tool. I need to know who has access to my room. How do I do today? I send an email to security, and then security will say, oh, okay, I'm going to generate a report. I'll send you a CSV file of everyone that have access, and please mark in red.
Highlighted, yeah.
Highlight in red who should not have access. So now what I can do, I can say I have a server room, and I'm owner of that server room. So my system has tons of location, but let's say that Brussels office. I have a server room in Brussels that I own. So I can go in my server room and I can see at any point in time who has access. Cool. And right now I see that John Smith will have access in a month from now. And if I don't like I approved it, but let's say I change my mind and I say, no, he will not have access, I can go and revoke his access.
Okay.
And automatically he will not have access.
So you have full control.
And then I have full control, like I'm the owner of it. so I can revoke access. I can add people also. So I can say, like, if someone calls me and say, Joe, I need to go in the server room now, can you grant me access?
Because I don't have
exact. So yeah, or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
So I can go and simply say, okay, this Pina, I'm going to give you access. Find this Pina in the system, and I can say I'm going to give this Pina access only for 1 day if I want to. So I'm going to give them weekday schedule. I'm going to give you weekday schedule, and I say, okay, you're going to get only access today. So if I do this, then right away, ClearID will take your cardholder and it's going to grant your cardholder access to the server room right now.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you're gone. And the system, next day, I won't see you anymore because you're no longer having access.
Yeah.
Like your access will disappear from there. I can see groups that have access. So as the owner of the room, I can see that everyone in IT and every sales rep in New York have access to my room.
Now you go on vacation next week. What happens? Can somebody else replace you or take over your rights?
Yeah, so there's different,
work?
So you can have multiple people assigned. So I'm the owner and I can have a delegate or as many delegates as I want that can access. They can grant access, they can receive the request on behalf. Basically, yeah. It's going to be appear as themselves on the, but they become like approvers for that room, but they're not the owner, they're just a delegate.
Okay.
At that point.
You spoke about locations. How are locations defined? Is it one building? Can an area be considered a location?
Yeah, so the way ClearID works, you have a concept of site. So typically a site is a building or a campus where you're going to apply the same policies.
Okay.
So in Montreal, as an example, we have like 4 buildings now. So, but we consider Montreal as one site because when I invite a visitor, I invite them to the Montreal office. I don't invite them to building 3.
Okay.
So it's the same policy for the entire campus.
Okay.
Typically, I mean, a site needs to be located, like you need to have an address or something because that's what you're going to send to guests. So I'm going to show you now the visitor management portion. Maybe it's going to help you also understand that. Same thing, I'm an employee. I have the ability to do an access request, but I also have the ability to invite a guest. And as a user, I can have the ability to invite a guest to different sites based on my profile. So right now, my user has been granted the right to invite people on 4 different sites. But let's say right now I'm doing H2 campus. Automatically, when I invite someone to Montreal, they have access to the business center area.
And can different users have different rights?
Yes.
Based on their identity?
Exactly. So people from Montreal, So people from Montreal can have the right to invite visitor in Montreal. People from Toronto could have the right to invite people in Toronto.
And based on managerial, all those.
Yeah. So it's assigned per identity. Exactly.
Okay.
So at that point, as the host of the meeting, as the Genetec employee inviting guests, I can say, okay, my guests, I'll need also to bring them in the bistro, like we need their card to work if they want to buy lunch. So I can request extra level of access that will be given to those visitors. And those level of access will be applied to the actual temp card that will be given to them when they check in.
Okay.
So really those are areas in Synergis that are defined in ClearID as visitable area or areas where a visitor can be received. And then you can have different workflows. So let's say right now I invite someone in the bistro. The way we configure the system is if an employee invites someone in the bistro, they automatically get granted. But if an employee invites a guest in the lab owner needs to approve it.
Similarly to when an employee asks for request.
Yeah, exactly. So you can define a restricted area where like every time a guest, it needs to be approved.
Okay.
So that's what I did for the lab as an example. And now I'm going to specify, let's say my event name is meeting ABC, and it's going to happen, let's say tomorrow, and I can specify the time. By default, like it's a 1-hour meeting. Let's say it's a campus. So since we have multiple buildings here, I want to instruct my guests where they should park. I want to tell them, let's meet right now on the main building. So it puts the address. Now I can capture also the reason why they're coming in. And those are all custom field in ClearID that I can put values in, and they get pushed as custom field in Synergis. So whenever someone does a report in Synergis, they can see, they can do a report, show me how many people came for a partner meeting.
So all the reports will still be run out of Synergist?
Yes.
Okay.
So really at the end, like ClearID creates a first-class visitor in Synergist, and then that visitor can be assigned, checked in, assigned credential the same way a visitor manually created could be created. Now, those are notes, notes that can be shown to the security desk user, as an example. Here, it's where I specified guests. So I can say, okay, I have this guest coming in, his email is this. So the system tracks the guest via their email because it's also sending an email invite. I can we have like 2 custom fields right now that you can select. So let's say if the person has completed an NDA or not. So those become just values you can track in Synergist to the reports. I can specify the name of the company. I could manually invite several guests, or I can also import them via CSV. So you could have a CSV file that imports the list of guests, and then you create them. Here I can specify cell phone number, so whenever the guest comes in, I would like to be notified on my SMS on my phone. By default, the system will send you an email, but if you want the system to send you an SMS message, you can simply put your cell phone number in there. Now, my request has been sent, it's submitted, in a few seconds, it's going to be automatically approved because the system right now policy says I don't need my manager to approve it, but in some cases I could have my manager to approve the request. Now, since it's approved, at this point, the visitor has received an invite, but I never approved the lab yet. So in Synergist, that visitor doesn't have access to the lab. Okay. But he has access to the bistro and the business center.
How do we assure that he'll get access before coming?
Yeah. So I've received, because I'm the lab owner, I've received another email that says. So if I refresh that in a second, let's do that. I just refresh that somehow. So I'll receive, as the owner of the lab, I have an email saying, okay, he needs access to someone has access to the lab. Okay, I'm gonna just do this. So you see right now I have an email that says like John Smith invited guests to the lab. I can see the visit details, where now as the owner of the lab, I could see if John Smith had invited, let's say 25 people, I would see the list of 25 people. Right now I see only one because I invited. So
similar to when an employee asks for a request.
Exactly. And then as the owner of the lab now, I can approve all the guests, or I can say like that John, that Joe something will not have access to my lab, but this person will.
Okay.
So in some cases where you need to do specific screening on someone, you could do that. And then like, because I denied it, his profile in Synergist will not be added to the cardholder group for the lab.
And what does the visitor receive?
Yeah, so because I did a request, the system is aware where the site is, where to park. So the visitor receives a nice invite. So let me go back to this visitor. So if I look now, the visitor receives a confirmation for the meeting, automatically sent by ClearID. That confirmation includes a QR code, and the QR code is designed to simplify check-in, and I'm going to talk about check-in later on. It contains the detail where the site is. That information is from the ClearID configuration. When you specify a site, it says where they need to park, where they need to meet. Automatically, also, the system can send a PDF file specific to that site, saying where you need to park, are you driving, any safety measure that they need to be aware.
And that PDF file is customizable, right? It could be also a questionnaire that they may need to
answer. Exact. So it's when you create a site in ClearID, that's where I mentioned the concept of site.
Yeah.
When you create a site in ClearID, you assign a PDF that will be seen by all visitors coming in.
Okay.
And then you can put whatever you want. Also, that confirmation of visit is sent as a meeting invite, as a calendar invite. So then the guests can simply save this to their calendar, and when they show up, they have the QR code to check in. Now, there's a few ways to check in, and like most of our customer, Some of them are using Synergis, so obviously that's the simple way to check in. I'll be back in the slide. So option number one is every visitor created in ClearID appear as a first-class visitor in Synergis. Someone with the security desk will see all the guests. They can search for guests that are coming in today.
Yeah, so the receptionist can see, right? And say,
Exactly.
I have
The
10 visitors
receptionist
coming in
can
at 10
see
a.m.
it. She can
Plan ahead.
assign an HID card, so you can have a pile of HID card, assign them one by one.
So they have visibility
They
to all
can
of it.
print, if you want to print a paper badge, you can print a paper badge on a printer. Very simple. That's option one. Option two is the famous self-service kiosk. We got tons of requests to that, so we built a kiosk. I'm going to show a few slides on the kiosk, probably a video if we have time. Do we have time?
I think we have time. We could go to the video.
And then the assisted check-in. So let's start with the self-service kiosk. So the self-service kiosk is basically, it's an iPad-based kiosk that Genetec is reselling. So the option, we have two flavors of it. One is a floor stand mount. It's entirely black, like the white option is just an example, but it's a floor stand version where you can have either the printer mounted on a kiosk or the printer can be on a desk. So there's a way to mount the printer also on the kiosk, and it's a pure iPad and it prints a paper badge. And I'm going to show a video of that in a second. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry. Just want to show that video. So this is the application. When you check in, you have 3 ways of check-in. You can scan the QR code, you can scan your driver license, or you can enter your email address.
So if somebody wants to be a bit more secure and make sure that the person checking in, it might be a driver license option or a passport possibly as well?
Yeah, passport will be coming in soon. We're still finalizing a few things, but right now the kiosk is not really, it's still in LA.
Okay.
So we have a few customers using it. So the passport, we're working on that to be able to do that. But the idea is like they can scan. So right now this example is they scan the QR code. Then the system will locate the meeting invite, they confirm their visit, and then that's a video made by the developer where they use a bubble head instead of their face. The system takes a picture and then automatically via a wireless printer, via the broader wireless printer, then we're going to print a sticky badge. So the purpose of this is typically if you want to have a sticky badge for your guests, you have the option to put the printer on the kiosk itself, or the printer could be also standing on the security guard desk. And as they print, as the person confirmed is checked in on the kiosk, the host gets notified by email and SMS. And then the guard can scan that QR code in security desk and then assign an HID card, let's say, or an RFID card.
So if you only use a sticky badge, it's not really a credential, it's more of a visual?
Yeah, so actually the sticky badge is also a credential in Synergis because we're creating the QR code as a credential.
Got it.
So in some cases, let's say you have a turnstile, so you could have a QR code reader on the turnstile,
okay,
and you could have the kiosk, freestand kiosk, floor stand kiosk outside the turnstile. They check in, it prints the badge, and then the QR code can be used to pass the turnstile.
Okay.
And then as they check in, those gets notified.
So depending what kind of system they
so
have in
depending
place,
how you want
use it. Okay.
Exactly. The other option, even
card.
And also if you have a gated parking as an example, we're sending the QR code by email, then the QR code could be used to open the parking gate. So
actually, a question relating to that is, can I add license plate to the visitor for entering the gate?
It's coming. It's coming. I can't say a date, but definitely. So the idea is we want to be able to capture the license plate in the request, visitor request, and then they could drive through the gate. So the reason we did the QR code first is people told us like the license plate is great, but when someone has a car rental at the airport, I don't know when I invite them. So we're going to do both. So the first step was to do the QR code and then the license plate. So if you know the license plate of someone driving in advance, they're not driving a rental car, then you register them with the license plate, and then they can, with the sharp camera, it's going to be an LPR credential.
And you mentioned it's coming in the future.
It's coming. I don't want to say a date, but it's coming.
That's fine. But because it's a cloud-based system, when those kind of features come up, will those features get pushed to the customers?
Yes.
How does that work?
So exactly, because ClearID is sold as a, you don't need really, you just have a plugin locally, and that plugin self-updates itself also.
Okay.
So whenever we release a new functionality, you don't need to upgrade anything. You just need to start using the new functionality.
Perfect. Okay.
So there's no, it's the beauty of the cloud in a way.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so exact, that QR code can be used, like I said, to activate the gate also in the parking lot.
Perfect.
So in some scenarios, I have customer where they don't want a kiosk. They have a gated, so let's say they have a gated facility, and as people drive to the gate, we have a macro in the system that does a check-in. So they don't really go to a kiosk. As they drive to the gate, they scan their email invite with the QR code. Automatically, the system considers this as a check-in via macro, notify the host, open the gate, and then they show up as the reception. Exactly. Okay. So for some people, like they don't want to have a kiosk or everything, but they still need that QR code to enable to go on the facility. So that's how we do it. So we're like a port authority is an example where they want this.
Okay.
I think we're back to.
Yes.
I think we're good with the demo. I think we covered everything.
Yep.
There's one more application I forgot to mention. This is what we call the mobile assisted check-in. So the idea is a kiosk is good when you have unattended, like when you want an unattended visitor reception, but then you might have facilities where you have a gated facility and it's someone at the gate, like a very secure place where you have someone at the gate. I was talking to some people in the cannabis industry where they have someone at the gate. So they need to know who's planned to come in. And we did a mobile application for that, where the mobile application is able to show the list of guests coming in. It can work over 3G LTE connection. It doesn't need to have access to local system. And you can see the list of guests and you can check them in the same way they would do on a kiosk, but you can check them in via the mobile app.
Is that available now?
It's also in LA right now, but it's coming soon. But I'm looking for people. Actually, if some people are interested in this one, I'm looking for people to
try it out.
Even the kiosk, though. If some of you are interested to be early customer for the kiosk, we still have room.
Perfect. Perfect.
I think that's it for the demo portion.
Yeah. So now we'll get into a bit of the support options. So essentially, we've created a landing page and a product page for ClearID. The landing page, what I want to mention, I'll click on it. Let's see if it works. So the landing page is high-level information of what the product does. But what's interesting on here is you see how you score. Take the quiz, it might, right? Sometimes it depends on which page gets loaded. What that is a series of about 6 questions that asks you how you manage your access rights. And you'll get a score at the end. And so based on that score, you'll know if you're doing a very manual job, a semi-manual job, or if you guys are doing great at managing access rights. And then based on that score, you'll get information from us on how we can assist you to help you manage those access rights better. So it would be interesting if you guys want to go and take that test, and you'll get a score at the end of the quiz. There's a product page as well, as I mentioned, right here. And so on the product page, there's a number of videos with different use case scenarios that Joe was mentioning and what problems we help solve with ClearID. Features on the product, we have our brochures, technical brochures, and all other types of collateral that you can use. And then obviously, if you have any more questions, you could reach out to your certified Genetec partner, and they'll assist you and come to us if there's additional help that they may need. So as a wrap-up, how does Genetec ClearID fill the gap in the market? Again, off-the-shelf solution. This is a true differentiator from PIMM solutions that are in the market right now. It is a fairly affordable solution out of the box. As Joe mentioned, it's a plug-in into Synergist. Installation time is fairly quickly. We will work with you to create your policies within the system and the attributes, but it's much more simpler than having a very huge on-premise solution. unified experience, something. So again, because it's 100% unified with Synergist, also 100% unified with Omnicast and all the other solutions that Genetec offers, all managed from one platform as a service offering. So the pricing works on a yearly subscription base. So there's nothing really upfront to pay. You pay for the subscription based on the number of users that you will have using ClearID. And ultimately, what you're going to get out of this is help improve the flow of people within your organization without ever compromising their security. So these are the themes that we spoke about at the beginning of the presentation, which I hope we covered. The fact that access control alone is not enough for enforcing security policies and managing access rights. The manual approach does create security gaps. It is time-consuming, costly, and prone to human error. And the better approach is with ClearID. I think we'll go into some questions and answers. I know we've gotten a few questions throughout the presentation. The first one was, if I can move this. Can managers of certain divisions have rights to make access requests for new badges throughout this portal?
This is coming. This is not there yet, but definitely we're going there. So the idea is to have different type of badge that you could request, and at the end, different person could have the approval right on different type of badge. So this is something we're going to do on the roadmap. I cannot tell you. I don't want to give a date right now, but this is definitely something we see coming down the road.
Then the next one is, can the access request be used for not only card access, but door access schedule changes?
Interesting. Yeah, I never got that request before, but now that I see it, actually right now, you could request access on a different schedule. So I'm not sure if that's that question. Let's say if I have normal business hour schedule, I could request 24-hour access for a limited period of time. So it's possible to do that. I'm not sure if it was exactly what your question was, Michael, but you could, yeah, you could do that.
Okay. Next question. Okay, so we might have a tester for the kiosk, so that's fine. We have another question. We are moving our siloed systems to Genetec, and this would be beneficial for us. We have many locations with door guards. I can see this being a benefit. Okay, it was more of a comment than a question. Perfect. Can a customer start with the visitor management features of ClearID, then mature to PIM features? How is pricing affected by that phased process?
Yeah, we can take this separately, but yes, there's so the way it's possible to start with visitor management without managing all the people. So the way ClearID is licensed, there's a price per site. If we look strictly at visitor management, so there's a price per site, and then there's a price per people who can invite visitors. And that price of people can invite visitors is roughly like $7 MSRP US.
Okay.
So so if, let's say, if you start with ClearID and you say I have hundreds of people who can invite visitors, as opposed to thousands of cardholders that I want to manage, it's a way to scale the pricing and not use the PIM features.
So is there an on-premise solution for ClearID?
No, ClearID really is designed in the cloud, born in the cloud, to leverage the cloud. It's really we're not. It's a pure cloud approach. It's not something that could be run on premise.
We have another question here. What version of Security Center is it compatible with?
Yeah, very good point. So when we started ClearID when Synergist was at 5.7.
Okay.
So today you need Security Center 5.7 SR6.
Okay.
Or 5.8.
Okay.
Anything in 5.8 will work.
Okay.
Or 5.7 SR6.
Okay. So we'd have to, if we're not at that level, then
exactly.
We'd have to
so
contact.
Hopefully someone who has 5.7 can go to the latest service release, which is SR6, and be good with it.
I think another question is, what is the installation process like? How would it work?
So yeah, so the way it works, right? Someone orders ClearID, we create an account for them, and then every security center that needs to be connected to ClearID, they have a plugin to install. That plugin takes roughly two minutes to install. It's very, very simple. And after that depending if you need to link your system to the HR system. Initially, usually you don't.
Okay.
Then that's the only portion that needs to be done. But the rest is you can start using ClearID in a few minutes.
We'll wait a couple of more minutes, maybe one more minute if there's any other questions. Is there, so we got another question. Is there the option to blacklist or ban people and have the system notify security?
Yeah, that's one of the, it's not there yet, but it's also one of the top feature we have in the list right now for visitor management, definitely.
Okay, so it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. So right now you have a way to manually approve them, but yeah, we will have this. Hold on, there's a new one.
Under config tool, if we have visitor management, it would be considered as supported?
So today, if you have visitor management in the config tool, you have the ability to manually create visitors. So that's just, it's not ClearID, it's the ability to enroll visitors manually in Synergis.
So you don't get in advance.
You don't get
they come in.
Exactly. You basically, when someone shows up in security desk, you can create manually visitors. You don't have the print enrollment portion. That's what ClearID brings for the visitor management portion. Okay, are the driver license scanned or what type of device is required? So there's two types of things. What I showed you with the kiosk is we're reading the 2D barcode behind the license, the driver license, and we extract the name from the driver license. So basically, we're looking if someone in the guest book for that day has the same name as the driver license we have in front of us. So basically, ClearID doesn't really store the license number or anything like that. Now, there's also the ability to have, when you check in a visitor in security desk, if the visitor was created by ClearID or not, you have the ability to scan a driver license in the security desk. And then you can define, it's a plugin in security desk where you can define which value will be stored from that driver license. And then you have the ability to store the driver ID if you want to store it, the driver license ID.
Next question is, thank you for that. You can add can you add personalized fields?
Today, we don't, but it's also coming. So there's a list of fields that's defined and for the pre-registration, but you can add personalized field on the check-in via security desk. So it's entirely possible.
Okay, next question. Are the license images photos used to print badges?
So if you're using the self-service kiosk, the picture we use to do a paper badge is the picture taken by the kiosk because the driver license is not required necessarily, but it's really the picture. It's the picture from the kiosk. If you're using security desk to check in visitors, you have the ability to extract, if you have an ID scanner, to extract the picture.
Okay, without having to take another picture.
And then you can take this one to print the badge.
Okay.
So you need security desk to do that.
Okay, we have another question. You have both visitor management and ClearID for the features and demo to work appropriately. Visitor management is part of ClearID.
Exactly, it's built in. You have the option to buy ClearID without visitor management, just with the PIM if you want. But ClearID, the visitor management pre-enrollment is part of ClearID.
Follow up to the question before about using the license for the photo. What ID scanner can be used?
So we have a list, like the typical 3M Gemalto driver is supported for the security desk. So there's a plugin in security desk that exists today, and there's, I think, roughly 9 different scanners. I don't know all of them by heart, but like the 3M Gemalto, which is one of the most used one, is there. You can have, there's like 9 of them. I don't know them by heart, but I can follow up with you, Lawrence, if you want.
We have a question regarding cost. I think for all pricing, it's best to go directly to your SI, your partner, and they'll be able to go through that. If they need assistance, they could definitely reach out to the local RSM or BD or to ourselves as well, and we could help
Yeah,
clarify.
it's very easy.
that.
I mean, it's based on number of site and number of identities you want to manage, or number of people you want to you want to give them the ability to invite visitors.
And there's a price for the kiosk as well?
Obviously, the kiosk, there's a one-time price to purchase the hardware, the iPad and everything. And then there's a connection fee, a yearly connection fee per kiosk.
So all the pricing is based on a yearly subscription fee?
Exactly, except the hardware cost.
That you buy up front for if they want to have self-check-in.
Exactly. So I can, anyways, it's easy. Your SI should have the information. If they don't, like any Genetec rep will be able to help you on that.
I think the questions stopped coming in. So we'll be sending a recording of this webinar as well as the presentation itself. Again, feel free with any questions to your partners, and if there's anything they can't answer, somebody from Genetec will definitely reach out and help out. And thank you for the good job.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Take care. There's also, Frank is asking, yes, there's a it's possible to do a pilot with some of you if you guys are interested. So please contact your Genetec rep for that.
Yep. And if somebody doesn't reach out to you from Genetec, you could also contact the email that we use to send out for the invitation, and somebody will answer on that. But yeah, your Genetec rep is probably the best solution. Thanks again.
Thanks.